When we covered the Lindsay Clancy case the first time, we talked about what happened on January 24th, 2023. 3 children dead, their mother surviving a jump from the second floor. And almost immediately, one question taking over the entire case. Was this murder? Or was Lindsay experiencing postpartum psychosis? Now, more than 3 years later, that question has finally reached a jury. And after weeks of testimony, the case somehow feels even more complicated than it did before. Because the prosecution and defense actually agree on one important thing. Lindsay Clancy was mentally ill. Tonight, in part 2, we're focusing on what came out at trial, what Lindsay's former husband Patrick told the jury, what the psychiatric experts disagreed about, and why. After 21 days of testimony and more than 70 witnesses, the jury is still being asked to answer one incredibly difficult question. Welcome back to the podcast You Can't Unhear. One of the biggest moments of the trial came when Patrick Clancy testified. His testimony was complicated because Patrick was called by the prosecution, but some of what he said also supported the defense. He walked jurors through the months before the killings. Lindsay's anxiety, her depression, her insomnia, her repeated fears about medication, her suicidal thoughts, and eventually, the disturbing thoughts she said she was having involving the children. But Patrick also said something that became extremely important. On January 24th, he thought Lindsay was doing well, not just okay. He described it as one of her best days. She took Cora to a doctor's appointment. She played with the kids. They built a snowman. She sent him photos. Dawson dressed himself and proudly showed his dad. Nothing about the day screamed emergency. And that contradiction became central to the entire trial. Because if Lindsay was in severe psychosis, how could she appear so normal? The defense says that's exactly what makes postpartum psychosis so dangerous. Symptoms can fluctuate. Someone can appear functional and still be detached from reality in ways people around them don't recognize. The prosecution says, she was not psychotic at all. She was mentally ill, but still aware of what she was doing. Then jurors heard Lindsay's own words. Her diary entries became one of the most important pieces of evidence. She wrote about depression, not sleeping, feeling disconnected, feeling hopeless, worrying constantly about medication, trying to understand why she didn't feel like herself, and wanting help. The defense used those entries to paint a picture of a woman deteriorating while moving through a mental health system that never fully understood what was happening. But the prosecution used the exact same pages differently. They argued the diary showed Lindsay was extremely self-aware. She could identify symptoms, track medication changes, research side effects, communicate with doctors, recognize when she was becoming suicidal. So to prosecutors, those writings didn't prove she had lost touch with reality. They showed the opposite. She knew what was happening inside her mind. Again, same evidence, 2 completely different interpretations. The defense has focused heavily on Lindsay's psychiatric treatment. Over several months, she was prescribed multiple medications: antidepressants, anti-anxiety medication, antipsychotics, sleep medication. And Lindsay repeatedly expressed concern that the medications were making her worse. The defense argues she was over-medicated, moved from drug to drug, and never given the kind of specialized postpartum psychiatric care she needed. The prosecution pushed back. Multiple prescriptions don't automatically mean someone is psychotic. And importantly, one of Lindsay's psychiatrists saw her the day before the killings. Dr. Jennifer Tufts had a telehealth appointment with Lindsay on January 23rd, less than 24 hours before the children died. Her testimony was significant. Lindsay appeared depressed. She was anxious. She seemed hopeless. But Dr. Tufts said she did not appear manic. She did not appear psychotic. And Lindsay did not report hearing voices. There was nothing during that appointment, according to the psychiatrist, that suggested an immediate psychiatric emergency. For the prosecution, that's powerful. A doctor saw Lindsay almost immediately before the killings and did not observe psychosis. For the defense, it shows how easily Lindsay's condition may have been missed, because less than a day later, 3 children were dead. Then prosecutors returned to something listeners from Part 1 will remember: the dinner order. At 4:53 p.m, Lindsay texted Patrick about takeout. She suggested 3V, a restaurant in Plymouth. Patrick also needed to stop at CVS. Then he left. And prosecutors say Lindsay used those errands to create time. They introduced evidence that she had checked how long the errands might take. Their theory is simple. She knew how much time she had alone. She planned around it. And what happened next wasn't an uncontrollable psychotic explosion. It was deliberate. The defense sees something much more ordinary. A mother asking her husband to get dinner and medication. They say prosecutors are turning normal family logistics into evidence of premeditation, because we already know how the evening ended. And then we reach the biggest divide in the case. After the killings, Lindsay eventually told doctors that she heard a male voice. According to her, the voice ordered her to kill the children and then kill herself. The defense calls this a command hallucination, a classic symptom of psychosis. But prosecutors immediately raised the obvious question. Why had Lindsay never mentioned this voice before? Not to Patrick, not to her mother, not during her psychiatric hospitalization, not to her psychiatrist the day before. The first documented reports of the voice came after the children were already dead. Forensic psychologist Dr. Paul Zeisel evaluated Lindsay. He concluded that she had bipolar disorder with postpartum psychosis. And he told the jury he did not believe she was pretending. In his opinion, the psychosis was severe enough that Lindsay could not appreciate the wrongfulness of what she was doing. Another expert for the defense, forensic psychiatrist Dr. Philip Resnick, also concluded Lindsay was psychotic. He believed the male voice represented a genuine command hallucination. And his conclusion was very clear. Lindsay was not criminally responsible. According to that side, her actions were not the decisions of a mother who wanted her children dead. They were the actions of someone whose brain, in that moment, was no longer accurately interpreting reality. The prosecution brought in experts who disagreed. Dr. Gregory Satoff questioned the hallucination account. He pointed to inconsistencies in when Lindsay said the voice appeared and how it supposedly behaved. He also questioned why this voice, which allegedly commanded the killings, seemed to disappear immediately afterward. Then, forensic psychologist Dr. Kirk Heilbrunn offered another explanation. He agreed Lindsay had serious mental illness. He diagnosed bipolar II disorder, but he did not believe she was psychotic. His interpretation was that Lindsay may have been suicidal and believed her children couldn't be left behind without her. In other words, she may have wanted all 4 of them to die. A horrifying thought, but still a rationally organized one. And in his opinion, Lindsay knew killing them was wrong. That distinction is basically the entire case. And this is probably the most important thing to understand about the trial. The jury does not have to decide whether Lindsay Clancy had mental health problems. That part is barely disputed anymore. She did. The legal question is, did her mental illness make her unable to understand the wrongfulness of her actions or unable to conform her behaviour to the law? Because under Massachusetts law, that's what determines criminal responsibility. Mental illness alone isn't enough. You can be deeply depressed, suicidal, obsessive, emotionally unstable, and still legally responsible for murder. So when people online argue, she was clearly mentally ill, that's actually not the question the jury has to answer. The question is, how far did that illness go? Then, right near the end, the trial nearly took another turn. During expert testimony, Lindsay's Catholic faith came up. There was discussion involving suicide, murder, and Catholic teaching about mortal sin. The defense objected immediately. They argued religion had no place in deciding whether Lindsay was legally insane and asked the judge to declare a mistrial. Judge William Sullivan refused. Instead, he instructed jurors to disregard the religious comments. So the case continued. But it showed just how tense the final days had become. By that point, both sides understood. The jury was about to get the case. On August 27th, after 5 weeks of testimony, the lawyers got one final chance. The defense argued Lindsay had done everything people tell struggling mothers to do. She asked for help. She saw therapists, psychiatrists. She went to the hospital. She talked about suicidal thoughts. She worried about medication. She kept saying something was wrong. And according to the defense, every safeguard failed. And then there's Patrick, whose testimony, I think, makes this case so difficult emotionally. Because he didn't give either side the clean story they wanted. After more than 70 witnesses, the case is now with the jury. For each child's death, jurors have several possible outcomes available, including murder, manslaughter, or finding Lindsay not criminally responsible because of mental illness. And if she's found not criminally responsible, that does not mean she simply goes home. She could instead be committed to a secure psychiatric hospital, potentially for a very long time. If she's convicted of first-degree murder, she could spend the rest of her life in prison. So the difference between those two outcomes comes down to something none of us can directly see. What was happening inside Lindsay Clancy's mind during those few minutes on January 24th, 2023? And that's where part 2 ends. Not with an answer yet. Thanks for joining me tonight. I know that there are some conspiracies online about how suspicious the husband is, but there is no evidence presented in court that I can present as facts here. But we'll see how this case unravels in the future. This is not the end yet, so don't forget to subscribe, and you won't miss any updates about this case. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and I'll see you on the next episode of the podcast You Can't Unhear.